If you asked me what is the #1 game that I would want to see ROM hacks of that has a ROM hacking scene that is currently non-existent, I would say StarFox 64. Probably one of the single greatest video games I have ever played to this day. Everything about it was perfect, between the music, sound effects, razor-precise controls, and very sharp humanistic dialogue with a lot of subtext and personality. In my opinion, the trifecta of the N64 library is Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and StarFox 64. All first-party titles developed by Nintendo themselves, and all master classes of their own genres and series. Unfortunately, StarFox 64 is the only game here that has pretty much zero ROM hacking scene. But on the bright side, the original StarFox does, at least now. For me, the original StarFox is much more of a fascinating piece of history rather than a great video game. I have tried many times to play it, and usually after dying to a projectile that I didn't even realize was about to hit me because I only had 3 frames per second to react, I kinda just stopped playing because I can tell from that point that I'm just not gonna have a good time. With StarFox EX, also known as Exploration Showcase, I was hoping those problems could be alleviated, and yeah, a lot of them were. But it's also a fully blown new StarFox game with a ridiculous amount of features and flourishes. For a ROM hack of a game that doesn't have a ton of ROM hacks yet, the level of effort put into the new elements is absolutely ridiculous, and the bar has been set impossibly high for anyone else who is considering making a StarFox hack. So what's new about StarFox EX? Well, that's the thing, I don't even know where to begin. There are like 300 trillion new features in this hack, including things that aren't even necessary in the slightest and are extremely excessive. And just as an example of what I mean by that, I'm pretty sure there's an option to play with the SNES Super Scope. And in case you were wondering, yes, this hack does in fact work on original hardware, as long as you have a special Super Effects equipped EverDrive cartridge. The people behind this game went absolutely well above and beyond what any reasonable person could expect from a ROM hacking project. There is so much stuff in this hack that when I started writing the script, I went back to look at some of these release materials just to find out that I missed a bunch of features and I had to go back and add them in. And I'm still missing things. To even attempt to sum up this game in its entirety would be a half-hour video. So we're just gonna start small. The original StarFox campaign is here in its entirety, but it also features an entirely new campaign with 3 separate routes that all lead to Australia. Yeah, it's not just a jacked up version of the original game. The new campaign has the StarFox team fighting against a gallery of other Nintendo properties. I don't know what the pretext for that is, but if I had to guess, it's probably a revenge mission against all the IPs that Nintendo actually makes games for. Even with the simplistic graphics, it's very obvious who these guys are supposed to be. There's nothing quite like blowing up Link's floating head in space. He deserved it for destroying everyone's pots and stealing their money. Seamus from Metroid Prime Ribs shows up. There's Starwolf. Just what I needed to see. And then of course you got the Mario brothers, who are actually hard as shit because who can defeat Mario? This is a good time to bring up all of the things that you can change on the fly, most notably the weapons. By default you have the regular lasers from the original game and you can upgrade them with pickups, but you can also pause and change the weapons on the fly, and the variety is just ridiculous. I think there's at least 20 different weapons here, most of them being things you wouldn't even expect. There's even funky stuff that's just there because it's funny. If a boss is really giving you issues though, then as an absolute last resort, I recommend the super homing laser thing. This weapon is just completely broken and you can destroy bosses just by holding down the fire button. I would definitely recommend doing this if you're mostly just interested in seeing all the stuff the game has to offer. But if you're up for more of a challenge, the game does actually have a hard mode, which I am never going to play because I don't want to have a stroke. Like I said before, I was never very good at this game, so I'm not about to play hard mode. Thankfully, there are a lot of things that you can do to make it easy, like God mode. Really, that's what the entire ROM hack should have been called. StarFox EX offers a ridiculous amount of customization. I already mentioned the insane amount of variety with the weapons, and that's just barely scratching the surface. Take for instance the character models. You can basically play as almost any character model in the game. There are like 60 billion ships, it's crazy. You can play as a missile. Literally. I think for me though, the best ship is definitely the N64 style R-Wing. You can never go wrong with that. You see this? This is engineering. This is craftsmanship. Although you can't play literally every single model in the game, you can at least browse every single model in the model browser, and I severely underestimated just how many of them there were. There are even a lot of models that I'm not even sure show up in the game, which means they made some of these models just for fun and put them in the game, which means the people responsible for this hack are lunatics. There's also a feature that lets you choose your own aiming reticle, so you can see Mario when you're trying to shoot the shit out of a nondescript polygon. And on top of all that, you can even modify the color palettes of the world and the background. This is too much power for one person, which is why I suggested the game should have been called God Mode, because it really does allow the player to be God. In my opinion though, the feature that stands above all the others, even looking at a really wonky 3D model of Slippy, has got to be the 60 FPS mode. If you're playing on an emulator, you can overclock the virtual Super Effects chip to make the performance much better. This doesn't just look nice, but it also makes the game a lot more manageable. As I alluded to before, the original game is held back by performance issues, but what could you expect? It's a Super Nintendo game trying to make polygons. In reality, the frame rate usually sits around the mid-40s and lower in this mode, but anything is an improvement over the original performance numbers. And of course, I gotta give mad props to the soundtrack as well. The only complaint that I can reasonably give this game is just that it's a little prone to crashes. When you have a game this spontaneous and chaotic on hardware that was already struggling with the base game, it only makes sense that it's going to fall apart sometimes, even in an emulation environment. But even so, StarFox EX is one of the most exciting hacking efforts I've played in some time. On top of being insanely ambitious and having a ridiculous amount of replay value, it's a love letter to a series that has not had a lot going on for a good while. I do not see Nintendo releasing another StarFox by the time I'm 30, let alone one that's halfway good. I would love to be wrong, but unfortunately I've only been wrong 3 times in my life, so I'm not counting on it. But it brings me immense happiness to see the fans keeping it alive, forever and always. Ho ho ho! Thank you for watching today's video, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow. But I have to warn you though, tomorrow's game is, it's bad, and broken. In fact, I think I'd better call somebody.